Psalm 31, in its second part, verses 13 to 24, is a powerful declaration of trust, surrender, and hope amidst life's trials and challenges. In this video, we will delve, verse by verse, into one of David's most intense and sincere prayers, revealing a soul that moves from anguish to trust, from pain to surrender, and from threat to victory in God. Is your heart ready to experience this spiritual reflection and inner renewal? Stay until the end, because in addition to a transformative reflection, we will pray together, inspired by this psalm. A prayer that can restore your faith, renew your hope, and strengthen your heart in the presence of the Lord. In the first part of this psalm, we meditated on verses 1 through 12, where David cries out for deliverance, refuge, and mercy, expressing the vulnerability of one who feels surrounded, yet still fully trusts in the Lord's faithfulness. We saw how he recognizes that God is his fortress, his firm rock, and his safe haven from life's storms. Each verse revealed to us that even in the midst of anguish, God's refuge and protection remain unshakable, sustaining the heart and strengthening the soul. Now, in this second part, encompassing verses 13 to 24, David leads us on a path of matured faith, one that is born from pain but flourishes in trust. He transforms anguish into prayer, waiting into trust, and pain into praise, recognizing that only in God do we find strength, justice, and safe refuge. He shares his experience of betrayal, fear, and loneliness, and concludes with a powerful declaration of hope and gratitude. Each verse is a spiritual balm, reminding us that the Lord never abandons those who wait on him, and that adversity is also the time when God reveals his power, his justice, and his eternal love.
Verse 13, For I hear the slander of many, terror on every side. They conspire against me and plan to take my life.
David reveals here the weight of a soul surrounded by wickedness and lies. He hears the slander and feels the fear that surrounds him, but chooses not to be dominated by it. The terror on every side reflects the hostile environment in which he lives, but even so, David maintains his trust in God. He understands that, although men plot against him, his life is in the Lord's hands. The heart of the righteous may tremble, but it does not surrender, because it knows that divine protection is stronger than any threat. This verse also reflects our own battles against fear and injustice. There are times when harsh words and adverse situations surround us on all sides. Like David, we may feel the weight of criticism and betrayal, but the secret lies in transforming pain into prayer. Faith does not deliver us from danger, but it gives us the courage to face it. True refuge is not in the absence of problems, but in the constant presence of God who sustains and protects those who trust in him. Today, this verse invites us to apply faith amidst chaos and pressure. When fear tries to dominate, when the voices of injustice want to silence our hope, we must remember that the Lord knows the truth and fights for us. May we live with steadfast hearts, trusting that God transforms every slander into strength and every conspiracy into an opportunity to witness his faithfulness. May we find peace on all sides amidst terror on every side, the peace that only the Lord can give. To reflect, have you allowed the voices around you to drown out the voice of God in your heart? When you are wronged, do you seek revenge or refuge in the Lord? Isn't the terror on every side an opportunity to prove the power of trusting in God?
Verse 14, But I trust in you, Lord, I say, you are my God.
In the midst of chaos and threat, David makes one of the most sublime declarations of faith, I trust in you, Lord. He does not ignore fear or adverse circumstances, but chooses to surrender control to the Creator. This phrase is a spiritual anchor, a reminder that trust does not depend on the absence of pain, but on the certainty that God remains present. It is faith that rises even when the ground seems to give way, and declares, with conviction, that the Lord remains sovereign. This confidence springs from intimacy. David speaks of a God he knows, not through theory, but through experience. You are my God, is the affirmation of a living and personal relationship. In the midst of insecurity, he rests in divine faithfulness, certain that the same God who sustained him before will sustain him again. It is this deep communion that transforms despair into calm and fear into security. David does not seek control, he seeks presence, and in God's presence he finds everything he needs. This verse invites us today to live with that same confidence in our uncertain times. When life seems out of control, declare with faith, "Lord, you are my God." May this truth guide every step, every choice, every silence. To trust is to let go of fear and rest in the Father's sovereignty. May we learn to apply this practical faith in our daily lives, at home, at work, in our relationships, remembering that if God is our center, no storm can separate us from His hand. To reflect, what does it mean to you to say from the heart, "You are my God"? Have you trusted in God even when you don't understand the reason for the struggles? And when fear tries to overwhelm you, is your first reaction to complain or to declare your trust in the Lord?
Verse 15. My times are in your hands. Deliver me from the hands of my enemies and from those who persecute me.
In this verse, David reveals a faith matured through pain. He surrenders not only the present moment, but the entire course of his life into God's hands. By saying, "My times are in your hands," he acknowledges that each season, of joy or sorrow, of progress or silence, is guided by a divine purpose. There is no chance, no luck. There is direction. Knowing that time belongs to God brings rest, because He is never late nor confused. What seems to take time is, for him, preparation. When David cries out, "Deliver me from the hands of my enemies," he shows that surrender is not passivity, but active trust. He knows he doesn't need to fight with his own strength, because the same God who holds back time also has the power to intervene in history. This attitude reveals a faith that waits, but does not despair, that suffers, but does not lose hope. Surrendering time to God is choosing to trust, even when there are no signs of change, believing that the divine clock works in favor of those who wait on Him. In practical life, this teaches us to stop trying to control what belongs to God. When we accept that our time is in His hands, we stop living suffocated by anxiety and begin to walk with serenity. Every delay ceases to be punishment and becomes care. Every silence ceases to be rejection and becomes protection. To trust is to learn to take a deep breath and say, "If the time is yours, Lord, then I can rest." This is the faith that transforms wait and trust and time in witness. To reflect, have you entrusted your time to God or tried to control what is beyond your reach? How do you react when God's timing seems to take longer? Do you believe that even in delays and silences, He continues to work in your favor?
Verse 15. My times are in your hands. Deliver me from the hands of my enemies and from those who persecute me.
In this verse, David expresses one of the greatest declarations of surrender of the human soul, the recognition that all of life is under God's control. When he says, "My times," he is speaking of each phase, of victories and falls, of joy and pain, of beginnings and ends. He understands that nothing escapes the Creator's gaze, and that even what seems chaotic is part of a purpose. This awareness is not merely poetic, it is liberating. Knowing that our times are in God's hands is the antidote to the fear of tomorrow. By crying out, "Deliver me from the hands of my enemies," David reveals that trusting is not about denying danger, but about placing hope above it. He understands that control is an illusion, and that only God has the power to reverse situations and silence threats. This profound surrender is what opens the way for divine action. When we stop fighting with our own strength and surrender to God's will, the burden becomes lighter and the heart more stable, even in the midst of storms. Today, this verse teaches us to live serenely amidst the unpredictable. Applying this truth means choosing to trust in God's timing. When the answer is delayed, when the silence seems long, when the path makes no sense. It is saying with your heart, "Lord, my times are in your hands, and that is enough." May this trust become a daily practice, in decisions, in waiting, and in suffering. Because the God who sustains time also sustains you. To reflect, have you entrusted your time to God or tried to control what is beyond your reach? How do you react when God's timing seems to take longer? Do you believe that even in delays and silences, He continues to work in your favor?
Verse 16. He does let your face shine upon your servant. Save me in your faithful love.
In this verse, David cries out for God's visible and transformative presence. His request for the Lord's face to shine upon him is a plea for light in the midst of darkness, for comfort in the midst of pain. God's face represents attention, grace, and approval. It is the Father's gaze that sustains the weary son. David understands that more than deliverance, he needs His presence, because it is His presence that gives meaning to any victory. When he says, "Save me in your faithful love," David reveals that his trust is in God's character, not in fleeting circumstances. He does not seek his own merit, but relies on the Lord's unchanging mercy. This faithful love is the anchor of the soul amidst chaos. It is the love that rescues, restores, and strengthens the heart when everything around it falls apart. Trusting in this love is finding rest even in the most turbulent days. Today, this verse invites us to seek more than answers, to seek the face of God. Applying this truth means living with our hearts turned towards His presence, in struggles, in choices, in waiting. It is desiring that the Lord's light shine upon our decisions, dispelling doubts and strengthening faith. May each day be a silent yet sincere request, "Lord, let your face shine upon me." Because where the face of God shines, fear is silenced and the soul finds peace. To reflect, have you sought God's presence as a source of protection and peace? How do you connect daily with the Lord's faithful love? What does it mean to you to feel God's face shining upon your life?
Verse 17. Do not leave me at the mercy of my enemies. Deliver me from those who rise up against me.
David raises his voice in supplication, asking God to preserve him from the dominion of his enemies. He understands that his own strength is not enough, and that only the Lord can prevent evil from prevailing. By crying out, "Do not leave me delivered," he reveals confidence in divine sovereignty, recognizing that control of life belongs to God. This is the prayer of one who knows that, even surrounded by opposition, he is kept under the care of the Most High, who never abandons His own. The vulnerability that David expresses is not weakness, but a sign of mature faith. He understands that dependence on God is the greatest form of security. When he surrenders his battles to the Lord, he finds rest and protection that surpass human logic. This verse reminds us that it is in our limitations that God's power manifests itself most strongly. Trust lies not in winning through one's own merit, but in remaining steadfast under divine care. Today, this verse inspires us to surrender to God everything that threatens us, people, circumstances, or fears. It is an invitation to live with serenity, knowing that the Lord knows every adversity and fights for us in invisible ways. Applying this truth means choosing to trust even when we don't see the solution. May we, in every battle, say with faith, "Lord, deliver me from the hands of those who rise up against me," and rest in the certainty that He is our faithful defender. To reflect, do you entrust your deliverance to God, or do you try to resolve your conflicts alone? How have you reacted to those who rise up against you? In what ways does God's presence strengthen your faith during times of persecution?
Verse 18. Let the lying lips be silenced, those who speak arrogantly against the righteous, with pride and contempt.
In this verse, David cries out for truth to triumph over falsehood and arrogance. He feels the weight of unjust words and seeks God's power to silence deceit. Lying lips represent not only slander, but every attempt to corrupt justice and tarnish the honor of the righteous. David trusts that the Lord is the defender of truth and that, in due time, he will silence every voice that rises up in pride and contempt. The attitude of the arrogant reveals hearts far from God, driven by vanity and contempt. But the psalmist reminds us that no malicious word escapes the gaze of the Most High. God sees what is said in the shadows and responds with justice and wisdom. When lies seem to dominate, faith calls us to remain steadfast in integrity, certain that the Lord exalts those who live righteously and silences the pride of the wicked. Today, this verse teaches us to trust in divine justice amidst human injustices. When we are hurt by false words or judgments, let's choose the path of trusting silence and prayer. God is the one who defends the truth and transforms humiliation into honor. May we learn to respond to slander with faith, remembering that no arrogant voice is stronger than the voice of God speaking in favor of those who trust in Him. To reflect, when you are the target of unjust words, how do you react? Do you trust that God can silence the voices of lies and arrogance? In what ways have you chosen to remain just and faithful even when you are offended?
Verse 19. Oh, how great is your goodness, which you have stored up for those who fear you, and which you have wrought for those who trust in you, in the presence of the children of men.
In this verse, David extols with profound gratitude the immensity of divine goodness. He recognizes that this goodness is more than a momentary act. It is a treasure reserved by God for those who fear Him and trust in His faithfulness. There is a silent beauty in this divine care. God does not waste goodness. He prepares it with wisdom, waiting for the right time to reveal it. Trust and reverent fear are the doors that allow us to experience this eternal generosity of the Creator. David reminds us that God's goodness often works in unseen ways. Even when we don't see it, the Lord is working in our favor, cultivating answers, preparing paths, and strengthening our faith behind the scenes of life. Every divine delay is proof of love and purpose, not of forgetfulness. The psalmist understands that the Lord's goodness is constant and patient, always working silently until the moment comes to be revealed before all. Today, this verse inspires us to live with confidence and gratitude, even in seasons when God's goodness seems hidden. He remains good, even when we don't understand, even when time seems to drag on. May we recognize His daily blessings, small or large, and rest assured that He acts both in secret and in full view of everyone. Divine faithfulness never fails. It flourishes at the right time and transforms our waiting into a testimony. To reflect, have you trusted in God's goodness even when you don't see immediate results? How have you cultivated the fear of the Lord in your daily life? Are you willing to wait in faith for the blessings God has in store for you?
Verse 20. You will hide them, O Lord, in the secret of your presence from the intrigues of men. You will keep them, you will hide in a pavilion from the contention of languages.
David acknowledges that there are unseen dangers, poisonous words, and hidden plans that only God can neutralize. When he speaks of the secret of your presence, he refers to a spiritual refuge where nothing external can penetrate. It is the place where the weary soul finds rest, the wounded heart is restored, and fear loses its power before the living presence of the Most High. This hiding place does not depend on circumstances, but on the security that comes from fully trusting in the Creator. The pavilion symbolizes God's constant care, a sacred space where evil cannot reach. David understood that divine protection goes beyond the physical, encompassing the emotional and spiritual as well. Even surrounded by enemies, he remained steadfast, knowing that he was safe in the Lord's hands. This inner certainty gives us courage to face storms, for there is an invisible, real, and safe refuge, protected by the wings of the Almighty. Today, this verse challenges us to seek refuge in God's presence in our daily lives. When we are struck by criticism, unfair words, or external pressures, we can remember that He guards our hearts and strengthens our spirits. Trusting in this invisible refuge transforms fear into serenity, bitterness into peace, and uncertainty into hope. Living with the secret of your presence means walking with confidence, knowing that God is our constant protector in all situations. To reflect, have you sought refuge in God's presence when words and attacks rise up against you? When everything around you seems unstable, do you remember that there is a secret place where God keeps His children? What kind of quarrels of tongues have been trying to shake your faith?
Verse 21, Blessed be the Lord, for He has worked wonders for me, His mercy, when I was in a besieged city.
David recalls feeling surrounded, trapped, as if in a besieged city, a scenario of isolation, fear, and constant pressure. Even in this context, he recognizes that it was God's mercy that sustained his life, brought deliverance, and renewed his hope. This verse is a song of gratitude amidst overcoming adversity, reminding us that divine care manifests itself even when all seems lost. Each difficulty faced becomes an opportunity to see God's faithfulness in action, transforming anguish into praise. The besieged city symbolizes not only physical danger, but also spiritual and emotional challenges. Often, our hearts feel cornered by worries, criticism, or unseen attacks. David understood that when the enemy seems to surround us on all sides, it is the Lord's mercy that erects an invisible wall of protection and grace. Divine intervention occurs precisely in the moments when despair could prevail, transforming fear into confidence. This experience reminds us that God acts silently, but with power and precision, in favor of His children. Today, this verse challenges us to recognize the Lord's mercy in our daily lives. Every act of help, every detail of care, every deliverance is proof that He is present. When we feel surrounded by difficulties, we can learn to praise even in silence, knowing that divine intervention never fails. This confidence transforms anxiety into peace, insecurity into courage, and allows us to walk in faith, remembering that God's mercy is revealed in every moment, great or small, of our existence. To reflect, when was the last time you thanked God for His wonders in the midst of struggle? Have you acknowledged divine mercy even when you feel surrounded by difficulties? What kind of siege has been trying to stifle your faith lately?
Verse 22, I was saying in my distress, I am cut off from your eyes. Nevertheless, you heard the voice of my supplications when I cried out to you.
David admits that, amidst the turmoil, he even felt that God had abandoned him. This feeling of separation is profoundly human. Who has never felt that heaven has fallen silent? Yet, even when doubt dominated his mind, God continued to hear his cry. The Lord did not turn away. He simply waited for the moment when faith would resurface amidst despair. This experience reveals the tension between emotion and trust, showing the depth of true faith. The expression, I am cut off before your eyes, shows a heart that feels invisible and forgotten, but this perception does not correspond to spiritual reality. God never ceases to see His children, even when they feel lost. David navigates the oscillation between faith and emotion, an inner battle that everyone faces in affliction. It is in this contrast that divine grace manifests itself, reminding us that God's love remains steadfast, even when the human heart falters. Today, this verse teaches us to persevere in prayer, even when we feel forgotten or silent. True faith doesn't demand perfection, but the decision to cry out and trust in God's constant listening. Every moment of doubt can be transformed into spiritual growth when we recognize that He hears not only words, but also our groans and tears. Applying this truth to daily life means learning to rest in God's presence, even when everything seems distant, and trusting that God is working even in silence. To reflect, have you ever felt that God has turned away from you in the midst of pain? How do you react when it seems like heaven is silent? What lessons can you learn from the fact that God heard David even when he doubted?
Verse 23. Love the Lord, all you his saints, for the Lord preserves the faithful, and abundantly rewards the proud who act arrogantly.
David stops talking about himself and turns his message to all who believe in the Lord. After experiencing deliverance and divine faithfulness, he invites the saints, those who seek God with a sincere heart, to love the Lord deeply. This love goes beyond feeling. It is a response of gratitude, reverence, and commitment to God's goodness and justice. True love for Him manifests itself in daily life, in choices that reflect trust, obedience, and constant devotion. To love God is to recognize His presence in every circumstance and allow Him to guide our steps. When David states that the Lord preserves the faithful, he reminds us that faithfulness is sustained by divine care. This preservation does not mean the absence of challenges, but the certainty that, even in the midst of trials, God protects and strengthens those who trust in Him. In contrast, the proud, those who rely only on their own strength, receive the consequences of their arrogance. The verse highlights that our posture before God determines the direction of our lives. Trust and humility produce favor, while pride leads to downfall. Today, this verse teaches us to live our faith as a daily practice. Loving the Lord involves surrendering every decision, every action, and every thought to God's care. It means choosing humility, trusting in His provision, and responding to divine faithfulness with gratitude. In our relationships, at work, in our families, and in our daily challenges, we can apply this truth. Those who seek God sincerely find protection, guidance, and lasting joy. Loving and trusting in Him transforms our hearts and positions us under a grace that surpasses all pride and self-sufficiency. To reflect, how much is your love for God demonstrated in your daily actions? Have you chosen faithfulness even when it requires sacrifice? In what areas of your life are there still traces of pride that prevent God from acting fully?
Verse 24. Be strong, and He will strengthen your heart, all you who hope in the Lord.
David concludes Psalm 31 with a call to courage and perseverance. After pouring out his sorrows, confessing his trust, and witnessing God's help, he concludes with a word of encouragement to all who hope in the Lord. It is as if he were saying, I have proven that it is worthwhile to trust. Now you must trust too. The verb, be strong, invites an active posture of faith, not based on human strength, but on the firm decision not to give up even in the midst of difficulties. When he says, He will strengthen your hearts, David points to the source of true strength, God. The heart is the center of faith, and it is there that discouragement often takes root. But the Lord renews the spirits of those who wait on Him, infusing supernatural courage into weary hearts. The promise is clear: strength will come, but only to those who wait, trust, and persevere. It is a strength that transforms vulnerability into courage and anxiety into serenity. Today, this verse challenges us to apply active hope in our daily lives. Waiting on the Lord does not mean passivity, but trusting even when we do not see immediate results. At work, in the family, in personal challenges, and in the uncertainties of daily life, we can remain steadfast knowing that God strengthens the hearts of those who wait on Him. Every act of patience and every moment of trust becomes a seed of courage, sustained by the constant presence of the Creator, who empowers us to move forward with unwavering faith. To reflect, in what areas of your life is God calling you? To persevere, have you been waiting on Him in faith, or have you allowed yourself to be overcome by haste and fear? How can you strengthen your heart today, remembering that the Lord never fails those who trust in His faithfulness? Now that we have reached the end of Psalm 31, we can see how each verse reveals the depth of David's trust in God, even in the face of pain, injustice, and adversity. This second part showed us the importance of remaining steadfast, crying out sincerely, and waiting patiently, knowing that the Lord is our refuge, fortress, and deliverer. Each experience lived by the psalmist teaches us that true faith is not the absence of difficulties, but the certainty that God is with us in every challenge. May we apply these teachings to our daily lives, allowing the Word to transform our attitudes, decisions, and relationships. And to seal this message in our hearts, I invite you to pray this psalm for 6 more days, reading each verse as a declaration of faith, hope, and courage. Allow the Lord to strengthen your heart, transform your fears into confidence, and renew your soul amidst afflictions. Return to this prayer whenever you feel discouraged or overwhelmed, remembering that God is faithful. His presence guards us, sustains us, and fills us with courage. May this practice awaken in you the certainty that waiting on the Lord is the path to experiencing peace and victory. Now that we understand the meaning of each verse and the message the Lord wishes to convey to us through Psalm 31, I invite you to continue meditating and praying for 6 more days. Read each verse as a declaration of faith and trust, allowing the Lord's light to illuminate your uncertainties. Strengthen within yourself the courage to remain steadfast, even when fear, oppression, or difficulties try to shake you. May each word awaken in your heart the certainty that God is your strength, your shield, and your refuge. And to seal this message in our hearts, we invite you now to pray and keep with you this prayer inspired by Psalm 31. Return to it whenever your heart wavers or when circumstances seem dark. Remember that the Lord never abandons those who seek Him sincerely, and that His presence is a safe haven against all fear and injustice. May this prayer renew your hope, strengthen your confidence, and bring forth in you the peace of one who has learned to wait on the Lord. Remain steadfast, with faith, courage, and a firm heart until He fulfills all His promises.
Prayer inspired by Psalm 31, Part 2, verses 13 to 24. Almighty God, my strength and my shield, to you I cry out this day, trusting that you hear every word of my heart. Strengthen me, Lord, and do not leave me at the mercy of those who plot against me. Guide my steps with your righteousness and protect me with your eternal love. May I remain steadfast even in the face of difficulties, knowing that in you I find safe refuge and rest for my soul. Teach me to trust fully in your providence, to lift my eyes to you when fear and uncertainty try to overwhelm me, and to recognize that all help comes only from you. Lord, do not let my faith waver in the face of threats or injustices. Renew my courage and strengthen my hope in you. May I praise you with gratitude, even amidst tribulations, recognizing that your goodness and your faithfulness never fail. Teach me to discern the paths that lead to your truth, and to resist the snares of those who turn away from you. May my life be a testament to your protection and your constant care, reflecting your light and peace in every action and decision I make. Beloved Father, grant me wisdom to place every worry in your hands, trusting that you direct all events according to your perfect will. Bless my days, Lord, and keep all evil away from me. May I walk with firmness, security, and peace, knowing that in you my soul is protected. May my trust in you grow with each sunrise, and may my heart always celebrate your faithfulness, praising you for your mercy that is renewed every morning. May this prayer be an expression of true faith, drawing my soul closer to your presence and strengthening my spirit on the path of your righteousness. In the name of Jesus, Amen.
If this message touched your heart, like this video and share it with someone who needs to remember that, even amidst life's adversities, trials, or challenges, the Lord remains our strength, our shield, and the one who protects us with love and faithfulness. May we, together, learn to trust more and more in God's presence, to cry out for His help in all circumstances, and to live with courage, certain that He never abandons those who seek Him with sincere faith. Subscribe to the channel to continue following profound reflections on the Psalms. Activate notifications to receive each new study and leave your prayer request in the comments so that we can intercede for you with faith, affection, and dedication. May the Lord strengthen you to remain steadfast in the face of difficulties, to cultivate a grateful heart, and to find rest in the certainty that He is with you at all times. May your life be marked by unwavering trust in divine care, by serenity amidst struggles, and by the joy of one who understands that waiting on and trusting in the Lord is the greatest demonstration of faith. Until the next video, may God bless your life, your family, and your business.